Sos catis santis nimasi zoin caris amenos, that by death trampling down on death, and to those in the tombs he has granted life.
May Christ, our true God, who is risen from the dead, through the intercessions of his most pure and holy Mother, by the power of the precious and life-giving cross, through the protection of the bodiless powers of heaven, through the intercessions of the holy, glorious prophet, forerunner, and Baptist John, the holy, glorious, and all honorable apostles, the holy, glorious, and right victorious martyrs, of our venerable and God-bearing fathers, St. Nicholas, Archbishop of Myra and Lycia, patron of our community, Archbishop John of Shanghai and San Francisco, the wonder worker, St. Nectarius of Pentapolis, the holy wonder worker, the righteous ancestors of God, Joachim and Anna, and of all the saints, have mercy on us and save us, for he is good and loves mankind. Christos anesti.
Alithos anesti.
Christ is risen.
Truly he is risen.
Christos voskrese.
Voistino voskrese.
Glory to his third day resurrection.
We worship his third day resurrection.
Christ is risen from the dead by death, trampling down upon death, and to those in the tombs he has granted life.
Truly the Lord is risen.
Christos anesti.
Alithos anesti.
Many weeks ago, we began a reflection on the final prayer of the pre-sanctified liturgy. I know it may sound strange to consider the pre-sanctified liturgy. We have finished those for the whole year, and here we are on Holy Pascha itself. But as you might recall, from the beginning of Great Lent, and this particular Great Lent, we heard this prayer each pre-sanctified liturgy, and we ask ourselves the meaning of this sentence. You have led us to these holy days for purification of soul and body, for restraint of passions and hope of the resurrection. And we asked, how could he have led us to these days? The days in early March when we were all locked down in our homes. And we saw that this prayer from St. Gregory the Great has an answer. He led us to these days, the days that were holy regardless of our circumstances. Just as the same kind of holiness that those Christians in the catacombs in Rome experienced, or the Christians during the Turkocratia in Greece for 400 years experienced, or the Christians suffering under the Bolsheviks in Russia, what they experienced, or the Christians languishing in the communist prisons in Romania and in so many other places. How could Christ have led them to those days? And we too have had even just a tiny, tiny taste of what our forefathers experienced in all of those places and so many other places and times. That he led them to those days. He led us to these days, and he makes them holy. And what was accomplished in Great Lent? All of us, especially if you wish you were here right now, went through the Great Lent for this purpose, for purification of soul and body, for restraint of passions. And what did that lead to? For hope of the resurrection, for hope for today. Today's the day that we had been praying that prayer for so many weeks under conditions that for most of us represented a really acute degree of difficulty and suffering, at least compared to most of the rest of our lives and most of the rest of our Great Lents. with the possible exception of those who have gone individual or personal difficulties through these days. That is the point that we have been reaching all along, that we've been looking to this point. We're standing on the peak now, and we're down in the valley below. And every time we prayed this prayer, you've led us to these holy days. We had to understand, as we remarked so many weeks ago, he led us to these days. He led the early Christians to those days in the catacombs, and the Christians during the Turkocratia, and the Christians during the Bolsheviks, and the Christians during the Romanian communists, and all the rest. He led us to those days and made them holy, and what makes them see the resurrection way up on the apex of the hill was the purification of soul and body and the restraint of passions. That's what we've worked so hard for. That's why we fasted all this time. Right now, all the fasting's forgotten, and it's great to be able to eat meat and all of that. But let's not forget all the training that led us to this. We're like Olympians who have been training and training and training and training, and finally today we stand up there on the dais and receive that gold medal. That's what we have been working for. I think it's important on this great and holy Pascha to look back to the purification of soul and body that we spent so many weeks trying to accomplish. And even as St. John Chrysostom said last night, even if we didn't fast or we waited until the 11th hour, it still is the day of the feast. And the resurrection that we hoped to see here, right, as we said, for the purification of soul and body, for the restraint of passions, and for what? For hope of the resurrection. That's why he led us to these days. Hopefully these days now of quarantine will perhaps come to maybe a phased slowdown and an eventual end. But the hope of the resurrection is what the point of it all was. And how are we going to find that hope of the resurrection? It's not going to be in meat and drink today. Meat and drink is just an expression of that hope. It's an outward expression of the hope. The real hope of the resurrection came from the purification of our souls and bodies and our restraint of passions. And so we perceive that real hope of the resurrection right here, down deep inside our chest. And what all of that asceticism was designed to do was carve out a pathway for us to make that 30-centimeter journey from head and body into heart. That's what we've worked so hard to do, to dig a pathway that would make it easy for us to get down deep down here into the center of our chest and discover our lost heart. And it is in that lost heart that we discover that hope of the resurrection. I hope, brothers and sisters, amidst the radiance around us that you might see here in the church, the candles and the kuvuklion and the flowers and the food and the drink and all of the things that you're enjoying, I hope you'll take a moment today to look back on what got us here. Because even if you fasted only since the 11th hour, but hopefully most of you fasted and purified your souls and bodies and restrained your passions for much longer than that. I know most of you have. Most of our parish did do that. This is the fruit of our labor today. This is standing there on the dais with the medal being placed around our neck. Not just to reach the point where we can now eat meat and drink and do all the things we want to do, but so that we would have the hope of the resurrection. And that hope is discovered right here. That's where the joy will be found. And that no coronavirus or quarantine or exile from your church and Holy Communion can take away. Because the Lord himself said, I will be with you always, and my joy no man can take from you. That joy of the resurrection is discovered here through an easier pathway to bring ourselves into that heart because of our purification and our restraint that we have practiced. So that even on this Holy Pascha, we are always remembering it's not about the food and the drink, it's about the hope that we have labored so much to just catch a glimpse of. And if we just take a moment today, amidst all the feasting and everything else, just take one moment today, stop what you're doing, breathe, say the Jesus prayer, and quickly enter that deep heart, because the Lord has made that path. He has opened the path of resurrection to all flesh, and that path exists straight down into our own heart. That's the path of resurrection, so that the tombs have been opened. In other words, the tomb of our heart is now opened through his resurrection, and we can more easily today and each day of Bright Week enter that deep heart with little resistance from the enemy, because he has been dashed to pieces, as we have read yesterday. That's what Pascha is. It's that resurrection and the hope. That is, brothers and sisters, what this is all about. We're not here just for the earthly things. We're here for the hope of that resurrection, because, brothers and sisters, when he comes again in the splendor of his angels and the trumpets sound, and all the tribes of the earth weep, all those who tried to hinder us from that hope, all of them who tried to stop us and mock us and ignore us, when that great day comes and we see our Savior coming in the clouds of glory, looking to us and say, "Come, blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you." And there, as we stand at the top of the mountain and look down into this shining city, who has no need of sun or moon, because the glory of the Lord is radiant from everything. The crystal river and the radiance of all the saints in robes of glory indescribable and unapproachable, and Panagia herself receiving us into that kingdom. St. Nicholas smiling and saying, "Come, children, you labored for me in my church. Here's what you did." And he will open